Let me start with the easy questions. Your full name?
Sydney T. Levit.
What's T stand for?
Theodore.
Theodore. And your rank in the military?
PFC.
The highest rank was PFC. Yeah. All right, great. Your hometown when you were born?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Where in Philly, by the way?
It was actually Oak Lane, Philadelphia, which is a suburb.
Yeah, as an aside, my mom and dad were Roxborough.
Oh, Roxborough, yes.
Right on the Schuylkill.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
So I'm a Philly guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about brothers and sisters? Did you have any?
I had a sister, Helen, and no brothers.
Were you the oldest or youngest?
The youngest.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the eldest, my sister.
Okay, she was your baby sister then, yeah. What
Correct.
is your birth date, Sydney?
7/17/1924.
All right, so July 17, 1924, great. I would presume your sister was not a veteran. She did not serve during World War II. No. Interestingly, I read the other day that there were 16 million Americans who served during World War II. And only very few are
I heard
living,
there's about maybe.
Yeah, the other parameters of today in the American population of about 330,000, only 4% are veterans of our total population. So we're in sort of a club, if you will.
Lonely.
And you saw that bond today with General Jordan, how if you were in the military, there's that indescribable bond. And I might add here for the camera interview that Mr. Levit was escorted into the museum as a PFC by a 3-star general.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So congratulations for pulling that off.
I thought maybe he would rub off and make me a colonel. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, an honor of it. Yeah, field commission, battlefield commission. When did you join the Army?
1943.
Were you enlisted or did you?
I was drafted.
You were drafted.
Yeah.
So how did that work? How did you then, from your draft day, get into the 17th Airborne?
Well, I was transported from Philadelphia to North Carolina.
Camp McCall?
And
Camp McCall, was
yes,
it? Okay.
It took us 3 days.
Oh.
Every time a main train went by, they'd move us to the side. And they were old coal engines, and we were filthy from soot. You know, we get to Camp McCall, or actually, I'm trying to remember the name of the town. Hoffman. Yeah, Hoffman, thank you. And it's about 3 a.m., and we hear a voice say, "Get your asses off the train."
Had to be a drill sergeant.
Well, I'm saying to myself, it's 3 in the morning and this guy's yelling? So we get off the train, and he says, "You are now airborne." I thought he meant Air Corps. Oh, I was so happy. None of us knew what the airborne was, you know. So they load us up with trucks, and we drive to Camp McCall, and we get into the camp. There's no windows and no doors in the barracks. So I think for about maybe 2 weeks we became carpenters.
Why was that, do you think?
It's how new the camp was.
Oh, they hadn't even
we were the
constructed
first.
them. They were going to cut them out later.
We were the first, yes. So for practically 2 weeks we hammered and sawed. Okay, and
now during those 2 weeks you were officially then in the Airborne.
Oh yes.
Okay, so
from day one.
You get off the train and you were airborne.
Airborne.
All right.
Airborne. And so, of course, we started our training right away, and the training was pretty darn good.
And it was basic training.
Yes.
Right. The basic training, and then airborne was at Benning.
No, the only time we went to Benning was when we were started training to flying gliders. we didn't do our parachute training until we went on maneuvers in Tennessee. But coming back to the training of the gliders, it was some very funny incidents. We had one fellow by the name of Nick McAndrew, about 6'4", who was terrified. White knuckle guy, he'd reach across the aisle. If those who don't know, a glider is made in canvas, pipe, and plastic flooring. It seats 13, but it also can carry a Jeep with 2 men, no troops, or it can carry a cannon, small cannon. Nick was terrified. And what happened, we started to take off and he leaned back and his pack tore through the outer skin. So he reached across, he grabbed me and he had white knuckles. And thank God we went through 5 training sessions and they did a good job teaching us. You had to learn how to get out of the gliders as soon as you can. And they wanted you to form up so that you become stronger than individuals, you know. And we did all of that at Fort Benning.
Who were your instructors who were teaching you about gliders? Were
old
they guys?
Army.
But old Army, meaning they had done it probably 2 years prior.
Yeah, probably, yeah. And we learned a lot. It certainly was something strange. Whoever dreamt at the age of 18 you're going to be flying around some little rinkety old glider. Yeah. And we learned, and they were very good in training, a lot of training. And
the pilots during training were regular glider pilots?
Yes, pilot and co-pilot. And we really didn't know them. I don't even remember their names, you know. And they were trained to jump out of the air, but they carried pistols. And once we landed, they would, of course, jump out. And the way they loaded either a Jeep or a cannon, they lift the nose up of the glider. You know, you do have a picture of a glider there. See, so that was quite an interesting experience.
Sydney, I know you're wearing a glider badge and a jump wings. You were glider first, it sounds like. Yeah. How then did the parachute, the jump wings come about? Were you guys given an option after you got your glider badge?
No.
They just said, all right, Sydney, you're going to become a paratrooper also.
And maneuvers. And then they opened up parachute school, and I didn't want any part of it. But my buddies were very nice, and they said, if you don't join, I'm not joining. So I said to them, don't put this onus on me, but I love the idea of the training. The training was great.
How long was it, 3 weeks?
The training, I would say, maybe close to 4 weeks.
Yeah, it's 3 weeks today.
Yeah, and the way we trained was they built towers, and there was a wire that would extend to the other tower, and you'd hook up in a harness, and you stand there, and there you go, stand in the door, and you hold the cables, rather the straps, and then you would yell, jump. And then, of course, as you jumped, it would sink a little bit to give you that feel. So I ended up being a paratrooper.
I'll tell you a story about those jump towers. Psychologists have found that if you have a fear of heights, it triggers at 33 feet.
Oh.
Those towers at Benning the floors are 30 feet above the ground, so that when you're standing on them, you're 35 or 36.
Oh, I never
So if
knew
you
that.
have a fear of heights, they're designed specifically to weed you out at that point in time.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So we took 5 jumps, 4 during the daylight and 1 at midnight. And the field at night with a light here, a light here, light here, light here. When we jumped, my buddy and I, we landed way out of the drop zone.
Wind or...
And nobody could go back to camp until everybody was accounted for. So Nick and I are laying on the ground. It's kind of cool. And we wrap the parachutes around us. And he says, we better go back. I said, no. If we go back, we'll have to go to camp. We're going to have to get up tomorrow morning. If we're late, they'll give us the rest of the day off. So we sat there and we're here, Levit and the Canry, Levit and the Canry. We can hear them, you know. So finally I said, all right, let's go. We get back and the colonel says to me, where the hell have you two been? I said, that pilot dropped us so far off the drop zone, we're still walking. So we get back on the trucks, they unload us and say, the day is off. Ta-da! That was great, great.
Of your 5 jumps, which was your easiest of the 5? Less scary.
The last.
The last one, the night jump.
Yeah, the first one you're scared to death. You don't know what it is. The very interesting thing, our training was pretty good. And one of the fellows jumped out. You know, your chute is automatically tugged. And I'm watching him. And he landed too close on the guy below him. And the guy below him, his chute was open, sucked all the air out.
Yeah.
So he's in trouble. But he was a sharp guy. He stood up on that chute that was blown up, pulled the chute in, threw it out until it filled up with air and jumped. I said, wow.
Can you imagine the guy, though, on the other end of that while this was going on? Because he probably didn't see all that going on.
No. You had to be outside to see it. So the guy hits the ground, and I said, how are you? He says, why? I said, well, I saw what happened. He says, what difference does it make? I'm down, I'm safe. Good. And the maneuvers were brutal in Tennessee. It rained, and the hills are huge in Tennessee. And finally, they called off maneuvers because they said, we're under strength. And then they drove it. So now, this is funny. We're up in the mountains. It's raining. We're wet. It's miserable. The trucks, we never had trucking of our own. They'd always send black truck drivers. That's the only time I ever saw a black guy. I never realized that they were segregated. So the captain said to the guy, he says, now listen to me. Listen to me. Every time we go with you, there's an accident. Now, the roads in those mountains were like narrow dirt roads. If you crossed the bridge, it was a little rinky wooden bridge. So we get in the truck, and everybody is so tired, we're all dozing off. And all of a sudden, I feel like I'm flying. The guy missed the bridge. And the truck goes like that. And before I know it, I was still like in a daze, and all of a sudden I feel water running down through my back of my shirt. We're in a stream. So we get out, and of course they called all the emergency people back, and they get another truck and all that type of stuff. We never saw that driver again. I guess he's still running. I don't know.
So when you were finished all of your training at your basic at McCall, glider training, parachute training, you shipped to Europe right away, or?
Once we were finished maneuvers, we went to Boston. We got on a ship there, the USS Wakefield. And we went over alone. Must have been about 2,000 of us.
On the ship?
Yeah. And we made it to Liverpool. And from Liverpool, they took us to an old British camp. It was a rickety-dickety barracks. Terrible. And for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it. I'll probably hit it when I think.
Is that where our guys were killed in that glider accident?
It was
Swindon.
Swindon Wilkes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Swindon,
Yeah. And the town was very, very nice. People were very nice to us. And from there, then they shipped us over to Europe. And then from there, they shipped us to the Battle of the Bulge.
Let me go back to the Wakefield, though, as you're coming over. I interviewed his name is Gilbert Herrera, and he was on the Wakefield. And he said the same thing. You guys were not in a convoy. The ship was all by itself.
Yeah.
But he told, and I said, well, what a sweet target for a German submarine, especially with all divisional people on the one ship. And he told me that there were American bombers that flew over you guys, protection-wise, and then they handed you off to the British bombers, who then escorted you into England. So you were pretty much,
the British didn't reach too far because they were limited to
they had the black hole in the North Atlantic that
right,
you
but
couldn't
we
be covered.
kept going like this. They knew enough then.
Were they high? Was the ship moving at pretty high
Oh,
speed?
yeah. That was actually a luxury liner.
Right, I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody got seasick. Everybody.
Really?
If you wanted to fly a friend, you found he was leaning over the railing.
Any special memories on the Wakefield going over other than seasickness?
It was very crowded, a lot of vomit, and the food was terrible.
Oh. But how long did it take you then to get from Boston over to England? A week, maybe?
I would think so.
Yeah, I would too in those days.
Yeah. They were the crew was always on alert. They were always on their guns and whatever it was.
Yeah, I wonder why, though, they sent the ship by itself. No destroyer protection, especially a brand new Airborne Division with 2,000 guys.
Yeah.
That's like 1/4 of the division. Wonder how the other guys got over.
I have no clue, no idea. Nobody explained it to us why, or why we'd go by ourselves.
When you got to England, you said you went to an old British camp. Were they barracks or tents that you guys stayed in? They had
old. I think the buildings were from World War I.
They had windows, though.
Yeah. Yes.
Unlike McCall.
Yeah. They did. They did.
How long were you in England, Sid? Do you remember?
Well, we went through training, and England was very difficult, not from the point of the people. When you went on training, the hills were like this. But by the time you walked up to them, you had two things to worry about. The gradual slope was tough to walk up, and thousands of rabbit holes.
Oh.
They were not allowed to hunt.
So twisted ankles.
Yeah. So not only did you have to worry about the rabbit holes, it was the slope until you got up there. It was like, whoa.
So I'm trying to remember when you got over to England, but I know when the Battle of the Bulge started, probably the red flare went up, and you guys were mobilized and flown into France, put on the trucks, and then driven into the southwestern portion of the Bulge around Morant or Humont. Moray.
Well, we did some fighting in France, and then they sent trucks for us. We went through Luxembourg, Belgium, well, of course, France, and we didn't get to Germany yet, initially. We got our first real action was in the Bulge.
Before the action, though, when you landed in France, I've been told that you didn't have a lot of time. They put you immediately on trucks, and off you went. Off you went to the Bulge.
The Bulge was in big trouble.
What do you remember about that truck ride?
Cold.
Crowded, though?
Cold.
Each truck crowded, so body heat helped?
Nothing.
No.
We didn't have the proper clothing. Because the general was supposed to procure the clothing, rumor was, he thought the war would be over in April. And it didn't happen, as you know, and then everybody suffered from what I have.
I mean, some were saying you'd be home by Christmas.
Yeah. And every one of us suffered from.
How'd you, did you augment then your uniform during the Battle of the Bulge? I mean, I've seen photographs with guys having white sheets around them.
Oh, that.
White around their helmets, which made so much sense because there was snow on the ground, and if you had the brown GI, what a target.
And the other thing, too, when you slept, if you slept at all, you slept with another guy. So that your body heat would heat him and his body heat would heat you.
I would guess also the World War II trench coats, they'd get wet and not dry out very quickly.
Right.
They didn't have the materials they have now. No. So they'd stay wet almost all the time.
Yeah. What we would do, we carry an extra pair of socks. And when they got wet, we wrap them in under our shirts to dry out so we could change them.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
How about German equipment? Did
you
guys steal any of that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. They had fur-lined boots. They had overcoats. They had wool muffins on their hats. Their shirts and pants were
white.
Were warm.
Yeah.
You know, we had none of that. None of that.
Do you remember that if the German, when you fought the Germans, were they mostly older guys, younger guys?
Every age.
Every age, so.
Every age. I ran into a guy, I could cut my throat. I took a Luger away from him, and he must have been about 50. And the Luger was from World War I. It had the original holster. And I took it and I kept it until I got back to the States. And when my wife saw the gun, she said, I want you to get rid of it, which I did. Mistake. I should have shot her.
That holster is probably worth more today than the gun.
Oh, yeah.
It's so rare.
It was engraved with the date of it, World War I.
My uncle, Bill Smith, who was parachute field artillery battalion, 466, in Operation Varsity, he got a Luger, and he traded it to an MP for 2 cartons of cigarettes. And he said that was the worst movie ever made.
I know.
Because they were so, everybody wanted a Luger, I would guess.
I know. It was a great gun. The best pistol you could possibly carry.
Our officers carried 45 sidearms, 45 caliber sidearms.
I never had. What I carried was a carbine with a folded stock.
You had a carbine, okay.
Yeah, and when you got out of the glider or you got out of an airplane, you folded the stock and you had like a holster made out of canvas that tied to your leg, so you didn't be bothered with it because you had to get out or get down. And it was a fair gun.
How many bullets were in a
I think
magazine? Maybe 8 to 10 or 12,
I would
something
say
like that.
Yeah.
Normally, I would think.
Yeah, we always carried a lot of ammo.
Yeah.
It was always available to us.
Sydney, reading the history of the 17th Airborne, every tough engagement that the 17th was in, you were in it. Personally, you were in it. And starting with the Bulge, you were in the 193rd and attacked Flamiers, Dead Man's Ridge Walk. The 193rd, as you said earlier today, and we all know, was shot up so badly that you were merged with the 194th.
True.
But are there any stories you want to tell us about you guys coming down that hill in attack on Flamiers in the wide open, probably in your brown trench coats?
Well, you ran, like
zigzag, serpentine.
Towards the Germans. And it was a question of being lucky.
Yeah.
What it amounts to.
Yeah.
And coming back to the Bulge, we really got creamed.
Yeah.
We actually retreated the first day.
Well, I'm wondering why your officers and your NCOs would do a frontal attack like that.
It came from the top.
Well, the answer, I think, too, is that was the first combat engagement of the 17th Airborne.
True.
It could be your officers and NCOs weren't experienced.
No.
They hadn't been in
true.
combat before and didn't know a really good battle tactic.
No,
So,
none at all.
and so you were really lucky. You were the guinea pigs
Oh,
going
true.
down that hill.
Well, you knew how many casualties
Yes,
and
yeah,
deaths we had.
Plus, you were up against a pretty experienced German unit
Oh, much.
down there.
Oh,
They
yeah.
weren't kids.
No.
So,
And we
You-
couldn't
you-
understand when we went into a counterattack that the Germans on that hill disappeared. They retreated, and we never could figure it out. To this day, I can't imagine why they had such control. And Paul he walked, what was it, 6 miles? Yeah. And he walked
you
the,
did
the ridge.
You did the 5K walk. on
Yeah.
the-
It's longer than 5K.
Was it?
whatever
I thought they had 5 and 15 miles. I said K. 5 miles and 15. Whatever. They had the two. You did the short one. I did the really short one. I sat. I sat in the meeting room. Anyway, I've lost my thought train here. So Battle of the Bulge. Oh, I know probably why they pulled out is that there was such pressure on the north from the Brits.
be.
You know, when you look at the Bulge, you guys came in this way.
Yes.
Sorry. But you came in from the southwest. The Brits were coming down this way. They may have pushed the Germans in where these guys thought they were going to get cut off and surrounded. So they pulled out, so that wouldn't happen. Good thing for you guys they did that.
The funny thing about the Brits, this is actually in Germany, and the stuff is flying, and the American soldiers are flat out on the ground. And all of a sudden I hear a noise, and I turn around, it's a British tank. And I'm yelling at them, get down, get down. And the guy, and 4 of them on top of the turret, they're brewing tea, and he yells at me, would you like a spot?
And you said yes.
No, I said no. I said, we're on. Yeah.
Was this in Germany
Yeah.
or in
Germany.
Basel, in Operation Varsity?
Yeah.
Okay.
monster.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
So,
like, whoa.
Sid, you then came in from the southwest and came in here, fought around Luxembourg, the river, or
Yeah.
over here. And then, I guess, officially the Battle of the Bulge ended January 25th, 26.
I think so.
But you guys continued on to the Eure and were pulled out maybe in early February and moved back to bases out in France to be refitted and get ready for Operation Varsity.
Yeah, we moved back to Luneville, France. And we more or less refitted and started training again. And we had more open time there, which worked out fine.
How much time did you have there before? It was February, not a lot of time, couple of weeks. Because
Yeah, it wasn't much.
March 24.
Yeah, those
So
guys who
maybe
were,
a month?
Yeah, the guys who were missing guns or something of that
Yeah.
nature, or had to be cleaned up or something like that, you know.
So you took off, you were a glider, took off the morning of March 24th. What do you remember about that day in particular?
It was a huge armada. You could see for miles. You could see nothing but gliders. And over here we had the British 6th Airborne.
Yeah.
Now their gliders were much, much bigger than ours.
The horses,
I think they were 30 or 40
Yeah,
men.
exactly.
We held tops 13, plus the pilot and the
Smaller
co-pilot.
targets then,
Yeah.
but still.
Right, and it was an amazing sight. Amazing sight.
I've been, I think I've read that if you stood on the Rhine River on the Belgian side, when the Armada started, it was a full 3 hours for that armada to continue flying over you until the last plane. 3 hours
That's right.
of flyovers before.
The funny thing is this, we're someplace in Germany. We never knew where we were, you know. And we're on this road going east, west, north, and south. We're supposed to be in this corner here for 1 day. 3 days later, we were still there. The traffic of tanks, trucks, and men, east and west, north and south, never stopped. And I thought to myself, if I were a German soldier and I stood up on that hill, I'd give up.
Give it up for the fatherland.
I'd give up. The production, what this country could do was staggering.
Well, to that point, my uncle told me that, and maybe your dad did too, but when they hit the ground, again, they landed in the zone north of you, X?
Or I don't know
whatever, you know, in the middle. 513th was supposed to go in there as infantry, clear it.
Yes, right.
They got misdropped up in Hamilton.
Oh.
So the field artillery guys had to go in and fight as infantry.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
Before they could set their guns up. Jerry's father, in our group, was a second lieutenant, was a battery commander, and was killed the first day running around trying to get, those field howitzers came in 4 parts in bundles, so he was trying to run around and find the 4 bundles to set his guns up, and a sniper got him. So he was, that's Jerry's story. But I did want to ask you, when you were in the glider being towed, that was a pretty long tow, 3 to 4 hours? I mean, it was...
Yeah. And there's
hopefully
two
your
of us.
buddy who was scared to death was not with you.
Oh, yes. Oh, he was.
Oh, he was.
His eyes never closed. They were always open. And don't forget, it was a double toe.
Oh, you were double toe.
Yeah.
Were you the lead or the one behind?
Well,
You know, they
I
stagger
don't remember
them.
whether the one on the left was a little bit longer than the one on the... It didn't make any difference.
No, it didn't. No.
You know, but it was a hell of a sight.
What was do you remember your feeling as a young guy in a glider going into combat?
I always said one thing. You had to be dumb and young.
Yeah.
You know,
Still,
I'm 18 years old like most of the guys.
great adventure.
And yeah, it's an adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said, oh boy, when do I get home and tell
you're
my
trained.
mother?
You're trained. You have a gun. Maybe you can shoot it. You know.
Oh, I mean, it's like, whoa.
How about when you were cut loose going in?
What's that?
When your glider was cut loose.
Well,
going
we
in.
were very lucky. Our glider pilot did a great job. We landed in a clearing. Our glider was not damaged, but some of the other guys hit the wires that they had strung, or they put stakes in the ground, or they built gouges in the ground. Someone hit and they went flip. In fact, our sergeant, he had his chest crushed. That was Marcus Belch. Paul found out he's in Holland, buried in Holland.
Luxembourg.
Oh, Luxembourg.
Where he's buried.
Yeah. And
Where he's buried. Okay.
his funny name was Marcus Belch.
What did you want to ask?
Who's in his glider?
Oh, yeah. Do you know who was in your glider by name?
Well, it was Robert Lee Johnson. He was from Richmond. There was Easter Day was from Missouri. Joe Joseph, I think he was there. He was from Coriopolis, Pennsylvania.
What was his last name?
Joe Joseph.
Joe Joseph.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, I think I remember right, our sergeant's name was Madden, but I don't know where he was from. And there was about 4 other guys. We're 13
Who
in
was your
total.
buddy who was scared to death of flying? What was his name again?
Carlos Nicandri.
So, okay.
Yeah, we call him
Carlos
Carl.
Nicandri, he was there.
He was the guy that came
The
up with
reason
this-
we ask that is it's very hard for us we know the glider numbers,
Yeah.
who their tow planes were, but who was in those gliders
Right,
was
right.
really not publicized because they didn't want the Germans to know if one of them had crashed, you know, how many
Yeah.
guys were in it and how many were killed.
A lot of,
Yeah.
well, of course, in the glider, you only go one way down, and there's no other way.
So Ed now will know those names and be able to marry you up with the glider you were in, and now we're beginning to build who was in that
Yeah,
glider now,
right.
which we are having trouble finding out.
I'm trying to,
So you landed and the door of the glider opened up, front door. You went out the front. Do you
no,
remember?
no. We went off the side.
Off the side.
Yeah.
So you were being fired on then, or not when you get out?
And we didn't know it because we were running like hell.
Yeah. How'd you know where to go though? Were you really well briefed before you landed?
Yeah, but it
about
didn't
the drop
work.
zone? It didn't.
It doesn't work.
You're very disoriented.
Yeah,
I would
because if you
guess.
land in the wrong
And you don't
drop
really
zone,
know where you were either.
Yeah.
You had to start. Yeah.
it really didn't work. You tried to form up so you had some strength.
Yeah.
You know, if everybody got out of the glider, so you were 13, plus the pilot and co-pilot who would run with you, and then they disappear. We never saw them once, but that was it.
Well, they're an interesting story. What happened to them?
Yeah.
They like you were formed up as pilots, but they were issued. You know the story, but they were issued sidearms.
Yes.
Fought as infantry, and then were pulled back to. They thought there'd be another airborne attack, and they needed glider pilots, so they became precious quantities. So they tried to get them off the
Yes.
off the battleground and save them for the
Yeah.
next time.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first engagement with German troops?
Oh, sure.
You do.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. Yeah.
Machine guns, 78 or 88s, or
they were hitting us with mortars.
so they probably had it pre-positioned before
Oh,
you
yeah,
guys
they were
even
set.
landed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They were well positioned. They were well dressed. They had good equipment.
Really.
Oh, yeah. They were in great shape.
It's been said they knew when you were coming, where you were going to
I'm
land, and
sure.
were all set up for
I'm
you.
sure, yeah.
So was that your sense when you landed, that you didn't
Well,
take
when
them
I
by
first-
surprise?
Oh, yeah. When I looked, once we settled in on the top of the bulge, I could see them. You know, we could virtually wave at each other. No, they were ready. And the minute we made a move down the slope, they clobbered us. That's where we lost so
Yeah.
many men.
My uncle told me that when he landed, he was not wounded. You had the Purple Heart. He did not have the Purple Heart. And the closest he came, he was parachute only. It was not glider and parachute. So when he came down, the nearest he got was having the heel shot off his jump boot.
Oh,
And I said, well, that's pretty close.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, but he told me that, you know, they really were getting shot up coming down on their chutes.
Yes.
But once they get on the ground, the German troops, this is 6 weeks before the war ended, and the German troops had done this is my uncle now telling me, they had done their duty, but they were not about to be the last ones dying for the fatherland. So he said they would surrender en masse. I mean, they would have a platoon. That's how he got the Luger. A whole platoon came out with the German officer who gave him his Luger and surrendered. And he was with one other guy, one other 17th Airborne guy. So a platoon's about 40 people. And he said they all surrendered en masse. So they had done their duty. You know, they had shot at you guys coming in, but all right, we're done.
I'll tell you a cute story, and don't ask me where these guys came from. All of a sudden, we see these guys with their hands up, giving up. We don't recognize the uniforms. And so they come in close, they're so happy, big smiles on their face, and they're not this, they're this.
Yeah.
We realized We don't know where they came. They're Italians. Now, what do you do with an Italian or Italians? What do you do with them?
Well, but by then the Italians had surrendered and switched sides, I think. So they were POWs.
Well, I don't know. Remember exactly.
Germans didn't like the Italians,
No.
especially the POWs. When after Rome and after the Italians got rid of Mussolini and
Yeah, but what do you think we did with them?
well,
There were
I
five.
would just send them back with, I don't know. They weren't really combatants. They were on our side then.
We made them cooks.
Oh, but they were great cooks.
That's the only time we ever had good food.
Where was this? I said.
I don't
this?
We didn't even. What the hell are they doing here?
Yeah, why would they be up there?
I don't know.
They were probably, well, they were POWs and laborers, I bet.
We didn't ask.
Yeah.
We always had some kind of Italian guy with us, and then we also had a couple of Polish guys from Michigan who were good to have.
Sid, for the record, would you tell us what awards and decorations you have, military awards and decorations?
My most valuable are the Rifleman's Bag. That's more important to me than the Purple Heart.
Your what?
CID.
CIB, yeah. Combat Infantry.
I treasure this one more than the
Yeah.
Purple Heart. And good conduct. I had a couple of Bronze Stars and, European Theater ribbons, whatever it is. And but this is the one I treasure. Yeah,
Great.
it's important. But I got to tell you another cute story. So now we're moving around, and we come around the bend, and there's 3 German tanks that this other outfit captured.
This is varsity now, and
Yeah.
you're in Germany, and
Yeah. They're big. I think they were the big tanks, the Tiger tanks.
Panthers.
Yeah. And
Tigers were the big ones, Panthers.
And
I
who are
think,
the
were-
drivers and the gunners? Women. Big women, big arms, big busts, big woman, and nasty.
German women?
Yeah, oh yeah. And they were the tank crews, and they were nasty. I mean, nasty. So one of the guys in front of me, he likes look at and she spits at him and hits him in the face. He takes his gun and smashes her in the mouth with the butt of the rifle. That was the end of any of them spitting.
Interesting.
But they were tough.
Where was that, Sid? Do you remember?
What's that?
Were you moving east towards Munster at this time
I
somewhere?
don't even know.
Okay.
I mean, we moved around. Nobody told us where we
Well,
were.
that's interesting. I've never heard the story that the Germans used women, especially tank
Oh,
crews.
yeah. Oh, they were big. I mean, big.
And they fit in
Only
the tank.
women. Yeah. We were like, whoa.
After a couple of days in the Basel area, then you moved east towards the Lembeck Castle with Sergeant Hendricks. Could you tell that story?
In my wildest dreams, if anybody would have said to me 77 years later, I would be back at the Lembeck Castle. Because when we were moving through the forest, and all of a sudden we come out of the forest and there's grass, there's a lawn in Lembeck Castle. Whoa. So now that's where our sergeant got killed. He would have made a marvelous officer. Gung-ho, smart, leader. And so we see this castle, and there wasn't much water into the moat. So we cross the bridge. I get in the castle, and I'm impressed. Why am I impressed? I never saw a kitchen so big. If though they had no heat, it was huge. So I said to the Baron who owns the castle, spoke English, he has family in Texas. I said, Baron, I would like a favor. And he says, what? I said, I'd like to go into he said, I can't take you in there. What he did, how he maintained it, the weddings, affairs, something of that nature. Very fine guy. And he said, but I'll take you into another kitchen. I didn't want to go in the other kitchen. I wanted to go into that one. That was the memories. See? And he was very generous. And so now I said, oh, I want to ask you a question. He says, what? He says, how come you have so much water in the moat? He said, the government allows us to siphon some water off from the river. Big, beautiful, oh God, how they lived in those days.
Well, this was 2022, right? 2 years ago, or last year.
Yeah, 2 years ago, yeah.
Yeah,
2 years
2022.
22, I think.
Yeah. In 21, we were there. I've been on 4 trips now over there, 3 at the castle and then 1 not. But when I was last there, the Baron, we took a walk around the castle, and I had asked you earlier where Sergeant Hendricks was hit. Covered the retreat of your squad, you said, not a platoon, but a squad. And so we were walking around the castle, and it was Mike, our videographer, was flying his drone. And I remember the Baron, they were working on that moat when we were there, and I think the retaining walls around the moat were beginning to deteriorate and fall in, so they were trying to straighten them up. But they did found unexploded ordnance in the moat. Like he told me, they found a bomb, from aircraft coming over.
Wow.
And they were, he said, that stops everything when you find something like that to come over and clear the stuff. But here we are in 1921, and they're still finding unexploded ordnance at that castle. So,
What a place.
What do you remember about Sergeant Hendricks being wounded?
He was great. Tall, good looking. It was about 3 or 4 years. I think it was about, I was 18, 19. He must have been about 4 years, maybe 5 years older than I was, most of us. He crossed that bridge, crossed that running, got in the inner court, and we heard some stuff. And the Germans were outside that, coming in, facing the inner court. And I can't remember whether we were waiting for him to call or whatever. And that's when we found out he got killed. Boy, was our morale down.
Who do you know who recommended him for the Medal of Honor? No. Had to be one of you guys.
I assume.
Somebody had to be there and did it. So, one last question, and then we'll take a quick break. After Lembeck, then you headed off to Munster, and during our last trip, we stopped in a town called Hultern, and Hultern is sort of halfway between Lembeck and Munster, and that's where the 17th Airborne Division was. The divisional headquarters was there as the division moved on Munster. And we stopped there because one of our veterans with us in 21 was in the headquarters company. And he wanted to see, he said General Miley saved his life because they were under artillery attack on Halter, and they were in this building. And he said, all right, everybody down into the basement. And no sooner did they get to the basement than artillery round hit upstairs, which would have killed them all. Wow. So he, to this day, is personally dedicated to him. All right. After Lembeck, off you went to Munster, and there was some action in Duisburg where there was a labor camp. 17th went down there, liberated the labor camp. Of course, the history down there was such that the Germans had murdered all of the Russian prisoners right before they moved out of Duisburg and buried them in a mass grave. And our guys went in. I've seen pictures where the 17th has machine guns set up on those big buildings around the central plots, as the German calls them, the middle areas. and made the German, primarily the German Nazis who were in that town, dig up the mass grave, individually exhume the Russian prisoners who had been shot, and then bury them in individual graves in the central portion of Duisburg. We visited Duisburg in 21. Now it's a beautiful city, of course. Ironically, one of our Scion members is Polish, and his grandparents were Warsaw captured, sent to this labor camp, and his father was born in the labor camp and was liberated as a 2-year-old.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, talk about synchronicity. So, do you remember anything of what I've just talked about going in Munster? Where I'm getting to on this is, where were you when the war ended, and how did you know or learn that the war ended?
Well, what had happened, the weather was miserable. We were all wet and cold. And in front of us was this huge prison. I don't know whether it's the same way you were talking. It's about 4 stories high. And we were told not to go in it. But we were so miserable. The gate was open, and we go in, it's pitch black, and all of a sudden we hear some noises. So we go down and we see some flickering flame. Some of the prisoners got together and found some wood and made a fire in a potbelly. And they were huddled around it. And the most dramatic thing that I saw among them, of course they were extremely thin, their eyes, you could see their eyes open. First of all, they didn't know anything about us as Americans. And then we heard a crashing sound. Oh, and we made a mistake. Whatever we had in our pockets, we gave them, which you shouldn't do because they're starvation. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so now we hear this crashing sound. It's pitch black. Some of the guys had flashlights. And we go down, and there's a cell. And this little guy is there with a sledgehammer, and he's crushing this machine. He'd been chained to that machine, a Greek, for 2 years making shoes. And he always said to himself, if I ever get free, I'm going to kill this machine.
And he was in the process.
Yeah, so we run back, and we tell the captain, he chewed our ass out, and he says, I'm glad you guys did what you did.
Even though I said not
back,
to.
Yeah, they sent back, brought ambulances and everything for these men. And then we just kept moving, because we were moving pretty good.
How did you learn the war was over?
How did we learn the war? Gee, that's a very good question. I guess maybe one of our radio men got it over his radio.
Any celebration at all that day?
Yeah. But the big celebration, I'm jumping around,
was New York?
Well, when we were sailing back to the States, a train for Japan, in the middle of the ocean, the ship virtually lifted out of the water. We were in the middle of the ocean, and they announced the war in Japan was over.
Yeah. Not only were you going home, you were going home permanently.
Oh, yeah. We go back, and we land in New York at the Empire State Building. Well, the ship is like this. Everybody is on this side. And I'm looking at it, and it's great. And then all of a sudden I said, oh, my God, I got to get a job.
Do you remember the name of the ship that took you home? Was it a Liberty ship or a...
Isn't that terrible? It wasn't like the Wakefield. It wasn't that big.
What?
But
whatever. Huh?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, whatever. And then we got a 30-day leave, then a 60-day leave, and a 90-day leave. They didn't know what to do with us. You got 14 million men who were released at the same time. What are you going to do with them?
How long were you in Germany before you came home? Before you shipped out
I
to
would
come
say,
home? War ended in May.
I would say maybe 8 months.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you then transferred to the 82nd or 101st?
No, I was transferred to the 13th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was never activated. You know.
Right.
But I'll tell you, it was
An experience.
crazy. Yeah. Valuable. Really.
When you get home, you weren't married when you went. You were 18.
No, I went home to get married.
Oh, so that's my question. How did you meet your wife, and where did you meet your wife, and how long did you date before you got proposed?
I was the president of a Jewish organization called AZA.
Immediately when you got home?
No, prior.
Oh, prior, before you left. No.
And I heard about her through a friend of mine who was blah, blah, blah. So I went home to her house because her brother, who we're going to visit tomorrow, was in one of my committees. So I wanted to meet her. So I called him up. I said, I want to come over and talk about our next program. I go over, and I'll never forget her. She comes downstairs in a bathrobe, and her hair is sopping wet. That's how I met her.
And angry probably with her brother for not telling her that you were down there.
Right. And thank God we married. He was number one. And my two girls. I have two girls after Paul. And happily married. And
How about grandchildren now? How many grandchildren?
I got 6 grand.
And
And
great
I'm going to have 11th great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think so. My big problem is,
So the Levit name is continuing then?
well, I have to, yeah, I have
All
to.
girls?
Two.
Oh,
Fun.
you
The
had
man
2
was
girls.
a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the only boy.
Yeah.
I'm the only Levit boy.
My big problem with that situation, I got to look at the parent to remember whose child belongs to who. Then I remember their names.
That's me too, Paul. I'm the only son. I had 2 sisters. Fortunately, we have 2 boys, so we've got the Greeby name continuing.
Yeah, good.
So
good, yes.
it's working.
Yeah.
How did you propose to your wife then after? How long did you date before you get married?
Well, by virtue, we went out that New Year's Eve, and she always said to me, when I asked her to go out with me, she says, I don't go out with, I was younger than her. She said, I go out with older fellas. So being the salesman I am, I convinced her to go out with me New Year's Eve. And shortly after that, I went overseas, and we stayed in contact.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
You wrote to one another when
Oh,
you
yeah,
were
oh, yeah.
overseas?
Yeah,
Okay.
she made wonderful fudge.
So when you came home, it was sort of a fait accompli that guys were going to get married?
No,
No?
she was going with another guy.
Oh, even though she was writing to
Yeah,
you
oh, yeah,
overseas.
He was, they called him Stretch. He was about 6'2", whatever. And
Was he a vet? He wasn't a vet, obviously.
yeah, yes, he was.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
So she was writing to both you and him.
Yeah. So anyway, I said to her, Elle, you got to make up your mind. I'll give you 1 week. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to see you. When you make up your mind, you call me. She called.
Very romantic. Said.
Yeah, so she called me. We always had a pet named Buddy. She says, well, Buddy, you're it. And
You win.
I said to her, let's think about this a minute. No. We got married. It was great. And we married for roughly 57
Did you go
years.
back to Philly?
Yeah.
Okay. And 57 years
We were
in
married.
Philly. When did you go to Jersey then?
And then what happened, I went into business selling children's clothing. And my territory was the state of New Jersey. So most of my business was in Jersey,
and you
northern
knew,
Jersey.
You knew the terrain up there then.
Yeah, so we moved up to Morristown, New
Oh,
Jersey.
Right. Great area.
Yeah, it was great.
So that's where you get your gift of gab, selling children's clothing.
Oh, yeah.
What
We had a
was,
theory. You make them, we dress them.
What was the name of the company you worked for?
Well, I was an individual,
You
it
were
was
sales
called
rep. Sales
Jack
rep
and
for
Jill
them,
was one company. Another one was called His Nibs. He made boy shirts. And the other company was Cucumber. They made cute little overalls.
yeah. So when did you retire then?
Oh, God, how many years ago would you say?
Well, hard to tell what you and Dick used to pull off, so.
Yeah.
Okay, there.
He's still working,
No,
probably.
but,
No. Yeah.
Well, probably 5 years ago, if you really want to be honest.
Yeah.
He was selling
Nin-
screen door, custom screen doors.
95 then. You quit when you were 95.
Well, what happened, so one of the men who I worked for, Jack and Jill, I was dating this woman who lives in Boca Raton, Florida. She's original. And we went to the country club, and who's there? Well, my former boss. And of course, we're so happy to see each other, and we started double dating. His wife was alive. And he says to me, what are you doing? I says, what do you mean what? I said, oh, you know I'm retired. He said, I got a job for you. I said, I'm not interested. Listen to me, he says to me, you'll love it. You can work whenever you want to. You want to work 1 day, 5 days, 2 days, whatever. You make it your way. I said, well, what do I do? He says, you sell phantom screens. I said, what is phantom screens? It is a screen door, and then we put a frame in the existing frame of the door, and you pull the screen door out of the frame and you hook it. You got a screen door. Or you unhook it, it rolls back into the frame. You don't see it. Oh,
Sells itself, said.
yeah. So I said, well, I have nothing to lose. I don't know what I'm doing, but he's happy. So I started, and it built up very, very nice. And it was fun. Worked when I wanted to. They paid you right on the spot. I had no responsibilities other than try and get orders. And it led me to some very, very interesting people. And it was fun. It was fun. And I guess I gave it up maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. But it was fun. I enjoyed it.
2 more questions, and then we'll call it. Thinking back to World War II, what would be your 1 or 2 most vivid memories of your time in service? I did ask you your happiest moment in the service, and you told me it was the day you were discharged.
Well, I would assume that when I learned that the war in Germany was over, and that was very traumatic for all of us, because we felt, thank God
We're not going to
I'm
get
alive,
dead.
I'm not hurt, I'm not wounded. And the next one, I guess, would be when Japan capitulated,
On the
because we knew that
ship going over.
we came home
Yeah.
alive.
I didn't ask you this, but your Purple Heart, how did you receive the Purple Heart?
Well,
That wasn't the frostbite, was it?
Yes.
Oh, it was. You got Purple Heart for frostbite. Not
We all
yeah.
we all
I think
suffered
everybody in the Bulge
terribly.
did, didn't they? Yeah.
terribly.
My last question is, as representing 22,000 men who served in the division, were you pleased with the dedication ceremony today of the plaque that will be here for hundreds of years,
Oh,
well after we're all gone? But as their representative, did we do okay? Was there
Very-
anything we missed that we should have added?
Very impressive. Very.
You're happy.
Very.
Yeah, I mean, you're
Very.
representing all those
I
guys.
was
If you're
honored.
happy, we're happy.
I was honored that the fact that you picked me and that I could represent all of these fellows who was in the 17th Airborne or in my company or in my squad, you know. No, 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 no. That's why I'm anxious for the extra booklets, because I'm going to be certainly showing those around.
That'd be great. Anything else we missed, Sid, that you
No, I
want to
must
chat
say
about?
this organization is unbelievable, unbelievable. And you've done so much for me on a one-to-one basis, and that how proud I am to be part of it. And there's one other organization. You ever heard of the Honor Flight?
Yes.
Another wonderful organization.